when you talk about plastic pollution to kids and you just talk to them and put out, they might take some of that in. If they come out to a barge and see a barge full of all this waste that you've collected, you then talk about it, and then you do a cleanup with them where they're out there getting their hands on it. I mean, you can just see it in their eyes and how they respond. It registers on another level. It makes them more conscious and aware of their personal decisions on a daily basis, and that's really cool to see.
From the river to the valley to the sea, all the places, all the people that you can meet.
Welcome to the Mississippi Valley Traveler Podcast. I'm Dean Klinkenberg, and I've been exploring the deep history and rich culture of the people and places along America's greatest river, the Mississippi, since 2007. Join me as I go deep into the characters and places along the river and occasionally wander into other stories from the Midwest and other rivers. Read the episode show notes and get more information on the Mississippi at MississippiValleyTraveler.com. Let's get going. Welcome to episode 54 of the Mississippi Valley Traveler Podcast, and welcome to 2025. I hope you got a relaxing break at the end of the year and some fresh energy to get going here in 2025, ready to get back out on the river as soon as the weather allows us to do so. And if you're hardier than maybe I am, maybe you've already been out already this year. So we're kicking off 2025 with an interview with Mike Coyne-Logan from Living Lands and Waters. And if you've been anywhere around the Mississippi River the past 10 plus years, you probably know a lot about, or you've heard a lot about this organization already. They are the premier river cleanup group, and they've inspired so many other folks to create organizations similar to theirs in their hometowns. We've got a couple of others here in the St. Louis area and in Missouri. So you probably know a little bit about their work, but in this interview with Mike, we're going to go a little bit deeper. We're going to talk about how this organization went from one guy, from Chad Pregracke, with a John boat picking up trash in his neighborhoods around the Quad Cities, how it grew from that to the big organization that it is today. So you'll want to stick around to hear how that organization grew, the vision that drove it all. And while they're known for their cleanups in particular, they have grown far beyond just doing cleanups. And these days they also have conservation classrooms. They plant trees and have trees they give away to others to plant. They host summer camps, but probably the conservation and stewardship components of their mission have grown more than anything else since they were founded. So in this episode, we talk some about the history of the cleanups as well, some of the logistics that go into pulling off events like these. It's very complicated in some places. It takes a lot of planning to make this work, and Mike describes some of what goes into that. We, of course, have to touch on some of the odd or unusual things that they found during these cleanups. Mike tells us a little bit about this past summer when they managed to arrange to extract over 50 cars from the rivers around Pittsburgh, from the Allegheny and Monongahela rivers in the Pittsburgh area. We talk a little bit about the number of volunteers that really helped drive these cleanups, and the numbers are in the thousands, and that's a key part of this. Really, this organization, the mission is so inspiring that it gives all of us an excuse to do something good, and that we probably need a lot more organizations that do just that. So it's an entertaining and far-ranging discussion about the Living Lands and Waters. I hope you'll stick around and listen to the whole interview, because Mike's got a lot of interesting things to say, including a couple of tips on what we can do as individuals to reduce the need for organizations like Living Lands and Waters to spend so much time out there picking up our trash. One quick announcement. I'm going to try to do this more often this year, but I have some presentations set up for this year, and I want you to know about those. Coming up on Saturday, January 18th, just a couple days after this episode releases, I'll be at the Hainer Public Library in Alton, Illinois, at the Genealogy and Local History branch downtown. to talk about the past and future of our river towns with a little bit of a look at the economic history of our communities and what we might be able to do to turn the fortunes of some of the places along the river that we love that are having a hard time of it. I'll have a few ideas on some things we might be able to do to bend the curve. As always, thanks to those of you who show me some love through Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can join the community and you can get early access to these episodes and you get to just make me feel good. And hey, $1 a month, I'm pretty cheap. It doesn't take that much to make me feel good. If you're not into the Patreon thing, then go to my website and you can buy me a coffee there. So go to MississippiValleyTraveler.com/podcast. And from there, you can figure out, or you'll see a link to how to buy me a coffee. At that same link, MississippiValleyTraveler.com/podcast, you'll find a list of all of the previous episodes, all 53 previous episodes, as well as the show notes for each of those episodes. So go back and indulge, binge listen, and enjoy some history and culture from the Mississippi Valley. And now, on with the interview. Mike Coyne-Logan began as a volunteer with Living Lands and Waters in 2005 and was asked to join the crew in 2007. He graduated from Northern Illinois University in 2000 with a degree in history and teaching, and he currently lives on their fleet of barges on and off for 7 to 8 months out of the year. His role, besides general barge work, cleanups, and senior programs manager, is acting as one of the educators on Living Lands and Waters floating classroom barge. He also does a lot of educational outreach in the local community during the winter months and helps conduct educational summer camps locally as well. Mike is excited for his 18th year on the crew. And a little riparian birdie told me that he also likes cookies. So maybe we can get an address and you can mail him some cookies later if you want.
I just think it.
Mike, thank you so much for joining the Mississippi Valley Traveler podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Dean.
Well, it's really a pleasure to be with you today. You're the first guest of 2025, so we get to welcome in the new year and dream ahead a little bit about the season to come as we're sort of locked in the middle of a snow and ice right now.
Yes, yeah, no, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how it is for you, but we got one of our biggest storms in a couple decades here in St. Louis, which isn't saying much for other parts of the country, but for us it was pretty crippling.
Yeah, we got lucky. We missed that. It's funny because we're north too, so
Well, why don't we start with just kind of the background on Living Lands and Waters? I imagine a lot of the folks who listen to this podcast are already kind of familiar with Living Lands and Waters, but why don't we just kind of go through kind of some of the origin story, how it began, what the founding mission really was for this organization?
yeah. So the mission was started by my friend and boss, Chad Pregracke, who grew up right on the Mississippi River, just outside of the Quad Cities or East Moline, Illinois. Um, so literally the river was his backyard. He spent a lot of time just playing, working, fishing on the river. And one of the jobs he did in the summers in high school and college with his older brother was uh, working as a commercial shell diver. Essentially, just you know, with a go-kart engine and a garden hose and a weight belt and some gear, a wetsuit, he would go to the bottom and feel around. And a lot of it is, he talks about a lot of it is just, using your other senses because your vision's not very good down there, but how those were intensified and it was another way to realize, he always talks about how you could tell it's alive though. It was the sounds, like catfish kind of sound like bullfrogs, the clicking of buffalo, and just, but you could feel the life down there too as he collected these shells. And he would camp on islands to save money up and down the river with his brother. And it was all his time just growing up, working on the river. He noticed all the trash in these more remote spaces that you may see traveling by, but not on the level or magnitude, or you may not get out to these other places that unless you have a boat and you're cruising around and stopping these different places, just how much stuff had accumulated over the years in these different locations. So from there, he was like, I want to do something about this. And he started to reach out to officials in the state asking for funding. They all turned him down for a variety of different reasons, but overall, he kind of felt since he was so young, a high school student at the time, to take on this huge task of cleaning up the Mississippi River. Um, he didn't get some were interested, some said they didn't have the money, but there's all these different reasons. But he also felt just because he was so young to take on this huge task. So, he could have gotten up there. Fast forward, he's in college. His buddies had a NASCAR race on TV. He noticed, that on the cars and the drivers, suits had all these sponsors, and he thought, well, maybe I'll get a sponsor. And he took that idea, ran with it, started reaching out to different companies locally, started in the phone book with reached out to a company named Alcoa. Now it's Arconic. I think it changed to Apollo. But anyways, uh, he went in, pitched this idea along with into a lot of other companies, but Arconic was the only one that kind of said, "We'll see what we can do." Got back to him and gave him that first set of grant funding, which was $8,400. It was enough money for him to go out on his own, John boat skiff, and clean up trash that first year by himself. And it was crazy. And like at one point he was staging trash in his parents' backyard. They weren't really thrilled about that, but also spurred the idea, like one of the things that took so long is how do I get rid of all this stuff and how do I do it in a efficient, timely manner? And he got the idea, I think from a garbage boat in New York that they couldn't find a spot. I can't remember. Anyways, he's like, that's just visually, it's remembering, it's powerful. He thought if I got barges, I could store this stuff. It brings attention to the volume of stuff that's out there. And, that was what he had down the line. But it wasn't until he got some, first he got some newspaper attention, local newspaper attention. And then from that through the AP, from the local newspaper girl, AP got wind of the story, this young guy cleaning up the Mississippi River. And it brought more attention and kind of validated what he was doing, his mission, and made people more aware of it. And from there, it's been a lot of obstacles, a lot of things he's overcome, but it's come a long way since his humble grassroots beginnings of just one guy in one boat with an $8,400 grant. So
Wow. How much do you know about that first cleanup effort he did on his own? Like, where was he picking up the trash and what did he find?
I mean, anything and everything, just tires, barrels, uh, from bottles to, just anything and everything you think, anything you think of that is in your home, uh, or would be in a landfill, you're finding in the rivers. And uh, I know that it was just tough. It's him by himself, and you're also trying to do the work, but then fundraise and keep the thing going. And I think he had to take out loans of his own to keep this. He's so passionate about what he was doing. It was, and just to build legitimacy and get this thing built and keep it and sustain it. So, I know it was tough. I know it was a lot of work, and sometimes it's good to remind yourself of just all the people, like how far it's come and how good we have it, especially for a nonprofit and what it's built into since Chad first started.
Right. So this is remarkable to me too. Like, so he kind of knew from the beginning that this wasn't just going to be a one-time cleanup, right? That he wanted to basically create an organization that would do this almost year-round across the country. Like he had a vision from the beginning of something much bigger than just picking up trash once or twice in his backyard, basically.
Yeah, I think his vision's always expanding. I mean, Chad's the guy with a million ideas that not only has those ideas, but tries to follow through on every one that he has. So the rest of us are just trying to keep up with him. And just that courage and that passion and that drive that it's cool to see someone that has something that's doing something to help out the world we live in. It's impressive and it's inspiring and it's like I said, the rest of us are just all just trying to keep up with him.
Yeah, that's awesome. So all right, so what year was that he did that first cleanup?
So initially it was started the organization started in 1997.
97. All right. So by the time you joined, some 8 years later, what was it like at that point in time? What was Living Lands and Waters like when you joined?
So there was a crew of people, um, uh, about 6 or 7 of us. We had a smaller 400 horsepower towboat and 4 barges. A house barge was an old headquarters that was kind of retrofitted, and um, you kind of hope stuff worked. Like you'd have to get propane tanks to run like our stove or just our heat in the colder months. We had a water tank that'll hold about 1,300 gallons of water, but that runs out pretty quick when you're living with 7 or 8 people. Um, opposed to now we have like a 35,000 gallon tank. So little thing, like little nuance. And then like there was like one like window air unit. So like imagine June or July, and we'd share rooms with, two other guys, and it was fine. And there was one bathroom. It was fine, but it wasn't the Ritz. Let's just say that. It was like very bare bones, um, nice, but man, a lot of things that I hope you go out there and be like, I hope everything is working. Because after a long day of just cleaning stuff out of the river, like is the hot water heater gonna hurt? Is the generator, is it going to have issues, from this little towboat that would run to the house, or we'd have to run another, just all these little things are like getting propane and putting a 100-gallon propane tank in a boat to go get it filled and carrying it sometimes over riprap. I could go on and on, but
Right.
really, really appreciate the accommodations we have now compared to, and like I said, wasn't terrible and it was fine, but man, it's a lot nicer the digs we have now. And we're
Right. So
very grateful for that.
it wasn't like at the end of the day you got to retreat to a luxury suite on the American Queen, you know.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. No, it wasn't fine. Now, don't get me wrong, it was fine. It was good, but there were, like I said, there's sometimes you're like, man, I hope stuff works. Like in the summer we'd all sleep in the living room because that's where the AC was, in the
Right.
one window unit, which is still, hey, people had a lot worse. So, uh, anyways, yeah, it's a lot different, and things have come a long way since then.
So when people ask you today, what the fundamental mission or purpose of Living Lands and Waters is, like, how do you respond to that?
Our main mission is obviously cleaning up rivers, cleaning up trash, creating awareness of this issue and the problems that surround this river pollution, particularly like plastic pollution. Um, and then also, the awareness of, protecting and restoring not only our rivers, and educating about people about the importance of our rivers, but the watersheds of those rivers as well. Because it really starts there, right? It's not just what's in the river. It starts with how we manage the land around it too, and doing different events and activities besides river cleanups that kind of go right along with that mission.
So, all right. So then let's kind of go through just last year a little bit. So from this one cleanup in 1997 that Chad did with an $8,400 grant and by himself, what did Living Lands and Waters do in 2024?
How long is the podcast?
How many
Uh,
cleanups? Like, what else did you do?
well, like so on average, on average year we pull about 500,000 pounds of trash. This year, and we just track it all through an Excel, like every barrel, every tire, every bag, and we put in a calculator with an average weight. So it's not BS numbers. And I actually do all that. And then I think this year we're like 400, it was just under 500,000, but 400, 50s between four. I'd have to look it up. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but anyways, it's like 450 plus or something, 450,000 plus. And one of the highlights this year is in Pittsburgh, and we've done this in the past, but we have an excavator now, donated to one of our sponsors, John Deere. And with the help of like a police dive team, the Hamilton County Rescue Team in Pittsburgh, we removed about over 50 cars with that excavator. So that was one of the highlights. Amongst that, it's just all the other cleanups we do with different volunteers, over 1,000 volunteers we work with, on about nine rivers and a couple other lakes, two other lakes. So it's a lot of traveling, from the Ohio River, the Tennessee River, the Illinois River, the Rock River, the Tennessee River. Um, I'm gonna miss some rivers here this year. Anyways, but we've worked in total since he started about 29 rivers. This year, I believe it was like nine and a couple lakes. Um, so that, and one of the cool things we start our year out with the cleanup efforts is with college students. Over 100 college students for the first 3 weeks in Memphis. It's our alternative spring break program, which I love. And like I said, we're all ready to get outside, and you feel the energy of these college students that come down in a location, a backwater channel of Mississippi River, and just most of it being primarily plastic and bag waste, a lot of tires as well, and anything, like I said, anything and everything you think about. Just from those 3 weeks, we removed over 100,000 pounds worth of trash. Do a lot of work on the Ohio, um, starting just above uh, Cincinnati, and working down to around Louisville. And then and that's with our barges and a lot of stuff we do. And then, like I said, the Pittsburgh event. So we have an excavator barge. We have two towboats now. One, we still have the 400 horsepower towboat that separated and moved up just to Pittsburgh by itself, while the other fleet of barges remained on the, Ohio, lower part of the Ohio, doing work, not only doing cleanups with a lot of our sponsors, employees, community members, students that come on to our floating classrooms. We do workshops with those students. Uh, and that's where our base of operations. So, and then on top of all that, we have one floating classroom that is dedicated to conservation efforts, learning about the ecological importance of the river. We have another classroom barge that worked in the Quad Cities and in St. Louis, and this barge is dedicated to introducing students to different careers on the river. That's on its own, and not from a conservation officer to a biologist to fish and wildlife to working on barges, uh, working at a grain elevator, loading grain, and just all these different careers a lot of kids might not be aware of that are connected to the river, so.
Oh,
So then we had our Million Trees project where we gave away over 170,000 trees. We work with schools to one of the biggest parts is keeping these trees alive. They're little saplings, so we have to wrap them sometimes individually, and that takes a lot of help. We don't have the manpower as a staff, so we need community members, sponsor volunteers, schools. We go into schools, and school kids will help wrap these trees, wrap their roots newspaper, put them in plastic bags, and store them in reefer trailers, and those get distributed throughout the U.S. and they're mostly oak trees. Then we have like invasive species removal programs that we do. Probably did at least between 6 and a dozen of those. Uh, and then
wow.
we do summer camps too for kids that that may these programs like the Boys and Girls Club, kids that wouldn't get out just to connect them with the river. We do some of those programs as well. So and then this time of year, a lot of planning, and we do a lot of outreach, a lot of repairs. So that's kind of it, and that's long, but that's kind of it in it may not sound like, but a summarized version of everything we did.
Well, that sounds like a lot.
And we're not, there's only 13 of us and 10 crew members and three office staff, so it's a lot, it is, but we get a lot of good help and support too.
So about how many volunteers did you work with in 2024?
We work with, off the top, I know in cleanups we work with over 1,000. I want to say like about 1,300. And then with our trees program, we probably work with another, I'd say easily 1,500 to 2,000. So we work with a lot of, I mean, over the years, I think we work with just from cleanups over 130,000 volunteers. And that's one of the really cool parts and a big reason we're able to do what we can do and create more. And that's the best way, I think, create awareness, right? Is get people out there to help us do the work we do.
Right, that's how you build stewards, right? Is that hands-on work, getting people out there and feeling that that hands-on connection to the rivers world.
Exactly. And I'll tell you what, we do workshops where we bring students on and we do a lot of hands-on lab activities from water testing to, you know, games involving like how invasive species can wreak havoc in an ecosystem and watershed models. And it's a lot of hands-on stuff. But the biggest thing that you see that it really, just from teaching, just seeing it really register is when you talk about plastic pollution to kids and you just talk to them and put out, they might take some of that in. If they come out to a barge and see a barge full of all this waste that you've collected, you then talk about it and then you do a cleanup with them where they're out there getting their hands on it. I mean, you can just see it in their eyes and how they respond. It registers on another level. It makes them more conscious and aware of their personal decisions on a day-to-day basis. And that's really cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. See that light go on?
Yeah, because you're walking about it. You're not just talking about it, you know. So that's
Right.
let's see.
So the trees program, you're planting trees in the floodplain forests. Is that right? Trying to replenish some of the floodplain forests?
That's a part of it. Yeah, that's how the mission started. You know, we work with different agencies to find, good spots to plant those trees on the uh, when we can near the river. But a lot of it is just we get the trees and then we give them away to people that need them or want them. You know, they have the space, sponsors, employees, people doing from all types of groups, from school groups to maybe someone that's doing some restoration work along a river and they want these trees to be planted there. So sometimes we actually do the planting with bigger trees, but from our trees program, these are all our 1 to 2 foot saplings. We're just getting out to people to plant. um,
All right.
so it's a little bit of both, but the majority of it is these smaller saplings that we distribute. And we chose oak because pound for pound, they support the most life of any tree in North America. And a lot of these trees early on were just, harvested, especially the ones that are near the river, for hardwood. Yeah,
Exactly
it
right.
makes sense, why they were. Yeah.
Right. So do you already have the whole calendar for 2025 mapped out?
No, we're working on it.
I was wondering how far in advance you have to plan for some of the for this work.
It's a lot. I mean, a lot of it's in advance, and then you get your major things you got to do, and then it's like once you get those set, okay, now we can start filling these other dates in, and we're literally that's what we're a lot of what we're doing right now, all of us. I mean, like spring break, Callie runs our spring break program. It's a lot of planning when you got students from a bunch of universities coming in and get them housing and figuring out catering. And then when we get that big a group, we've got 5 work boats, but then we hire out friends that have bigger work boats because we don't have enough just to get kids out to the different locations in this backwater channel of Mississippi to make it more efficient. Not only do you need the boats to take, the kids to the locations, but then you have to have garbage boats from all the trash they get to fill and then take it back, unload and sort on our barges, that stuff. Um, so it's a lot. And when you're communicating with a lot of, anyways, you could, communicate a lot of different kids, different groups, getting deposits, getting their hotels set up and lodging and all that stuff. So
Hey, Dean Klinkenberg here, interrupting myself. Just wanted to remind you that if you'd like to know more about the Mississippi River, check out my books. I write the Mississippi Valley Traveler guidebooks for people who want to get to know the Mississippi better. I also write the Frank Dodge Mystery Series that is set in places along the Mississippi. My newest book, The Wild Mississippi, goes deep into the world of Old Man River. Learn about the varied and complex ecosystem supported by the Mississippi, the plant and animal life that depends on them, and where you can go to experience it all. Find any of these wherever books are sold. So just for like a regular cleanup, like if you were going back to Pittsburgh and you're going to do a cleanup there, what are some of the details, the practical steps you have to go through before you begin to pick up that first piece of trash?
well, so a lot of it is just like having friends that do what we do on a smaller scale. And like for example, we have uh Evan Ramsey is a guy that works for a couple groups, the Allegheny Cleanways, um, and also the Tireless Project he did in the past, and the River Keepers. And he lives in that area, so he made us aware. We went up there and scouted. So we actually flew in last winter, and with his help and his boat, we had to scout. We had a sponsor that didn't want us to do work in there, but we also don't want to step on his toes. And like, what do we need as far as help? And he's like, hey, I know these cars, you got an excavator. And instead of bringing all our stuff up there, we brought that excavator to do that work because he had known. And then it's also then coordinating. We had developed this relationship with a dive team in Cincinnati, and they were just really easy to work with. And they're all about like, well, we can do some training up there and help you guys, and we've done this before, we're more aware of the work to because then you have the, is it stolen? Is there maybe a body potentially in these cars? So you always have to contact authorities pulling those cars out. And then they have the equipment. And we recently just and the divers, so they'll mark it, and then we know where to grab with our excavator to pull that stuff out. So
So I have to ask then, like, were there any bodies?
no, not from the cars that we pulled. But other things, it's like sometimes people make us aware. Like in Memphis, it was a sponsor from a grain elevator, like, hey, you have to check this spot out in this backwater channel. And we went down there with a few boats, and we got down there, we're like, holy, you know what? Um, this is crazy. I mean, literally miles and miles of like float in this backwater channel, it just floating plastic bottles and trash.
Oof.
And Dean, I'm not kidding you. In the years we worked there, we pulled over, just 1 million pounds in this area. And it's just litter that comes in from the city in a creek that drains about 50% of the watershed. And it's so much better, but like anything, everything comes every year. So that's the importance too of like doing these workshops. You can be reactive to these problems, but the cool thing with these workshops is creating future stewards, making them understand the problem and what they can do on a day-to-day basis, like reducing single-use plastics, keeping where you live clean. 80% of the trash we find is just litter on community streets that eventually works its way into our rivers. So those are, you don't have to, it's maybe not as sexy as coming out and going on the river, but those things are important, the daily decisions we make.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the, you know this better than me, I'm sure, but I think probably one of the common misconceptions is that all this trash, it's just people throwing their trash in the river. That's how it got there. But really, most of it washes into the rivers from other places, as I understand it.
It is. It is. And like plastics is definitely, that's the one thing I try to preach to people, just the amount of prevalence of plastics in our society is just, we need to like really look at that and try to think of alternatives. Or if we do create like closed loop systems where, because I believe only like 10% of plastics produced are actually recycled. Um, making it more convenient, making a better system, getting away from some of these single-use plastics. Uh, I just read something the other day. There's 2 garbage truck worth of plastics that enter the oceans every minute. Every minute.
Hmm.
2 garbage truck. And it's having, dire consequences and 90% it comes from our rivers, inland waterways. And then
Right.
enters the oceans from there. So, and then again, that 80% of that starts as just litter in our neighborhood. So just, those connections.
So how do you decide where to go for a cleanup?
Okay. Yeah. So for cleanups, some is like, hey, a sponsor's like, can we do a cleanup here? Like, um, maybe let us check. Because you got volunteers for 2 or 3 hours, right? You don't want to spend it just floating around looking for stuff. And on the Mississippi, that's a broad floodplain, or there's islands down in your neck of the woods, St. Louis or Grafton. You've got to go out, scout, and then maybe go in 200 yards where stuff gets flooded. It's not always right near the shoreline, or find those locations. And then can you get a boat in there? Maybe it's too shallow.
Hmm.
Maybe you got to do it from the land or approach it a different way. So there's a lot of prep work to figuring out how we can maximize these people's time and not just waste them. Just, oh, we got 2 bags. We waste our time just looking for stuff. You got to do the prep work to find where's the best, safest place to take these people to get the most bang out of their buck.
Are you sticking mostly to the Midwest or middle of the country?
For the most part, we've worked all the way out east on the Delaware, the East River, the Potomac, Anacostia, all the way to Pittsburgh, on the Ohio up to the Allegheny and Monongahela. I always butcher the pronunciation of the other one, but and then west, we've worked as far west as the Missouri, the Cedar River. Uh, yeah, so mostly the Midwest. We haven't got too far west when it comes to rivers. Like I said, the farthest is the Missouri, the Cedar, and some other smaller rivers west.
Hmm. So yeah, I was joking before about like whether or not you found any bodies in the cars you pulled out, but I remember like 10 plus years ago, I was on the barge for an event, and I remember there's a display on there showing off some of the more unusual items that you've pulled from these cleanups. Can you just kind of run through some of the more interesting things you found?
Yeah, so the first one that always I talk about is the Civil War mortar shell found on the Ohio River in Paducah, Kentucky. And so we found this, some volunteer found the shell. It was all rusted and like a projectile. Looked like about the size, looked like a giant bullet, the size of about a Nerf football. And not knowing, not being a bomb expert and just a dumb garbage man, I put it in a milk crate and drove back. It's just bouncing around in that milk crate. He left it, kept it there, and then I'll never forget. He was like, "Hey, can I get that back?" I go, "Yeah, you can have that. It's you found it." We at this point put on our Facebook page, and people were like, "Hey, you need to get that checked out. Could still have black powder, could still go off." So I have to reach back out to this guy. Hey, you need to maybe get this checked out. So he has to reach out. He goes, he was out of town or something. So he gets back to me a week later. I'll never forget, it's on a Tuesday. He's like, "Hey, I called the police. They brought their bomb expert there to my apartment. They said it was still alive. They brought the bomb squad to his apartment complex, evacuated his entire apartment complex,
Wow.
took this thing away to be detonated." And I'll never forget the text. He's like, "How was your Monday?" And because I never was on a Tuesday because he asked. The end of the text was, "How's your Monday?" I was like, "Not that damn exciting." But that we found big safes, literally, and people probably think this is a BS story, but we found a 19 in Cincinnati. We pulled a giant safe with the concrete, the metal casing, and we had to cut it open we had to break out the concrete, then torch open the metal in the middle. We opened it up, and I'm not lying, they found like 1 penny in there. But it was near a scrapyard. I don't know if it had rolled out of there over the years or what the story was, but anyways, we found a
You,
couple big safes like that. Never a big score. Chad, I know early in the career, found a surveillance tape from a bank robbery. Like on one side of the bridge, they found this was in Minneapolis, a bunch of tapes from a bank robbery, or a bunch of empty money bags. And the other side, they found this ball that was wrapped up in like saran wrap and duct tape. And they opened it up, and it was the surveillance tape from the robbery that the guys must have thrown off the bridge, but they had protected it. So he called the police. He's like, "I'm a crime solver now. I'm solving crimes." And he said the guy pulled up to a boat ramp. He's like, "Just put it in the trunk." So he threw it in the trunk and just took off. He's like, "You never heard. They never knew what the heck else happened with that story." Uh, Other unique items. I mean, just this year in Cincinnati with the dive team and just in different locations, like a lot of Lime scooters.
mm,
Unfortunately, people throw those. A hollowed out grenade, a couple guns, a pig's head, a horse's head wrapped in saran wrap in a cooler, uh, a mission coin box from like a veteran. It was in this like military box with all these mission coins, and that was a unique find.
mm.
We tried to reach back out to the guy, but I guess it was a weird situation where that guy, I think, might have had some, I don't know. He was like, I think he might have been in prison or something. I don't know all the details, but we tried, not to say we just kept it and try to get back to this guy. But, um, I mean, we have found some bodies over the years. A good story though is one time a guy jumped off the bridge in St. Louis, and some lady's like, "Hey, do you guys have boats?" Kind of knowing the answers. We're just hanging out after a cleanup. And St. Louis, the water's pretty ripping, down there
Right.
right off the cobblestone there, off the Eads Bridge. He jumped off the Eads Bridge.
Hmm.
And we went, and I'm like, "There's no way we're going to see this guy." And I yelled it at some other guys, and it was some carpenters building our new barge we lived on now. They got in the boat with another guy. The lady's yelling from the shoreline. I can't hear her. And I'm glad these other guys got in the boat because I want to be able to pull this guy. But I thought he'd be gone. He was hanging on to like a little light fixture at one of the pillars of the bridge. So he had jumped off and then realized this isn't, maybe I don't really want to do this. So luckily that lady at Contest pulled, then we just literally they pulled him out. Two guys and the other guys, but I couldn't see him. They saw him, pulled him in, took him ashore. The police had been called, just dropped him off, and then I think we literally went back to like it was really weird. We think we were drinking beers after a cleanup on the cobblestone. We just did that just happen kind of thing. So that
Wow.
was those are some of the crazier stories and things. But yeah.
And do you encounter animals very often when you're doing cleanups?
We do. I mean, obviously we see quite a few deer, beaver, a lot of turtles, flying carp, the silver carp. We see those, especially down in your neck of the woods around St. Louis. Snapping turtles. Um, I think I've only seen like an otter twice. A lot of crawfish. Um,
Probably a
you know,
fair number of snakes.
Not as much as you think. People are scared of those, but they're pretty, they stay away. We've seen them, but for the most part, I mean, last year in Memphis, it was funny. There was a snake. There was a suitcase washed up the shore, and a guy on the crew cut it open. There was a giant snake living in it. That was so, but they're rare. That's usually it's farther south where we get concerned, but that's why you try to go there early when it's still kind of cold and they're more dormant. But we see snakes, but not too many. I mean, they probably try to stay away from. They're not thinking we're a meal. They're just we're like we're a threat to them. They're not. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So 500,000, almost 500,000 pounds of trash last year, and in the millions over the course of the existence of the organization. What do you do with all that trash once you've collected it?
We recycle as much as we can. All the scrap gets recycled. A cool thing that Chad and his wife used to be on the cruise started another company where we're taking like the barrels, the buckets, the milk crates, and two, fours, and fives plastic, which is awesome because we used to have to pay to get rid of that stuff. And it takes up a lot of space because a lot of people don't take those bigger, bulkier plastics. Grinding that up to make heavy duty pallets out of. So what's cool about that is it saves us money from our end, but these pallets are a lot more durable and last longer than opposed to wooden pallets that people say get recycled, but really don't last that long. And all the hardwood trees you have to take down to make these pallets. So these pallets are they're more durable, they last longer, and then they're also in top made out of waste, a percentage of it, not all of it, but it's other recycled materials, but a good percentage. I mean, literally there's warehouse full of stuff that we've got that goes into making those products. So once
Wow.
again, Chad's the guy with a million ideas and then tries to follow through every single one of them. So, and that's Green Current Solutions is the name of that.
All right.
Yeah.
So then as you're collecting the trash, are you separating things on site into different piles for different destinations?
Yeah, so we keep all the tires separate. They'll get recycled as well. All the bags, uh, with just random, little things. We even have events where people sort through those at least once a year. And then for the bulkier plastics I talk about, we try our best to keep that separated. Um, and we do, but and we still pull it out. It's just sometimes it gets so full before you're gonna load it, we have to go back through and like pull barrels out, or people will be going home with the truck, take six things, we'll bring in a 30-foot trailer, load it up with all these two, fours, and fives to take back to the factory. So the logistics, setting up a location to offload these cars and with a scrapyard on the river, uh, doing these events where we bring people out and then put bags on these big tables that we build, just using like plywood and just tables we rent, and then putting it on with these like railings, and then doing it, and then working with different recycling facilities and putting non-recyclables in one dumpster, recyclables in another. To waste oil and like e-waste, we separate all that stuff. It's cool to see. Like when I first started, we would recycle the tires, we'd recycle the scrap, but it's evolved to us being better about recycling more of the stuff, creating the Recycle Like a Rockstar event where we sort through the bags, and Chad creating this entity where we keep all these bulkier plastics separated. But but it's a lot, to do it all and try to do it the right way.
I can't imagine too. 'Cause see, the time you're there in a particular site, then yeah, it takes a long time just for one cleanup because you've got to do all the prep, all the planning for it. You've got to get all the equipment there and organize volunteers. I think we tend to see the day of as kind of the main event, and in some ways, I suppose it is. But there's so much other stuff going on before and after that. Because even imagine once all the trash is collected, it does, as you said, it takes a while then to find a home for all of that.
Right. And some of it goes to a landfill, like big bulky styrofoam. There's stuff. Are we just like some of the bags? Do we sort through every bag every year? No, we just don't have the time. We did recently purchase a big giant hopper barge, which are like, what you put grain in. Because most of our other barges, just everything's out top so you can see it. But this gives us more storage. I mean, literally, I think we have like 1,000 tires in it from last year. And then we're gonna in it, it's so big, we'll have one section of it tires, one section of it, you know, bag stuff, and then that creates more space. So when we get the stuff this year, or as time goes on throughout the years, and then you're only doing maybe instead of offloading 2 or 3 times a year, you can do like one big offload. Because it's just like I said, it's a lot of logistics to do
Hmm.
that, to get rid of it and get rid of it the right way.
Right. And again, like to make something like this happen on this scale, you have to have a lot of partners too. Like, so can you speak to that a little bit? It's not just the volunteers who turn up, but you must have partnerships with a lot of different kinds of organizations and companies and
Yeah, for sure. Like a lot of barge companies, like helping us to have spots to fleet up, or those people knowing, having contacts in the city that know other contacts that, um, or know someone better at a scrapyard, or knowing scrapyard contacts and where those locations are in different parts of the river. Um, you can't have enough friends on the river, and everybody, luckily, these days we get a lot of, I mean, we've built a pretty good reputation, and um, that people are pretty good to us, and we're very fortunate from just community volunteers to our company sponsors. And we're very grateful for that. And I think it's cool. It's not just, hey, we need money to do this, but it's one thing to take a check from a company, but it's another thing to like get their employees out there and see what we're doing and making them aware of this problem. Like I said, getting their hands dirty, and people like it. I think the cool thing about what we do is, um, we live in this like pretty, you think, I believe we're thought by social media that we're a lot more divided than we are. But when people work together, people respect hard work. I think people want outlets to do good things, and it's really cool. People respect that. It brings people together, and then it makes them, I think about other issues and the value of our natural resources and our rivers. So that's what I love about it. It's action, and it's bringing people together, creating a cool community in different locations, and connecting people to what these valuable resources a lot of times we take for granted.
right, right. Yeah, the rivers bring us together, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's life, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's life, and yeah, it is. That's for dang sure. I read a crazy stat the other day, and you think about water and its value. And always trying to think of things that, when you go and talk to students or talk to people, what's gonna like hit them. But, when you talk about the amount of water that actually gets utilized for drinking water, it's like less than 1% of the Earth's water. And a lot of people don't have access to clean drinking water. It's almost 1 billion people. But I think there's more people that die every year from waterborne illnesses that were killed in all U.S. soldiers killed in all the conflicts in U.S. history. Every year, there's like twice as many people that die from waterborne illnesses. And
Wow.
that's one of those things like, man, it's not as, but it's a really important resource that, dang, we need to, not that people don't, but sometimes, even myself, every day, we need to remind ourselves the importance of this and the value of it, right?
Right, right. Well, maybe we take that for granted here because we don't have that experience so much anymore with people dying from waterborne illnesses in this country.
Yeah. And even then, I looked up a stat. I looked up a stat though, and according to the CDC, it's not as many opposed to like India, where it's like 400 to 500,000, but it's still, they, I think that they said 6,000, over 6,000 people.
Hmm.
And that's definitely, one's way too, it's too many, right?
Right. So What have you kind of learned from or learned about big rivers from your work with living lands and waters? Like, has your perception or what you think or believe about big rivers changed at all over time doing this work?
We know more about, I think sometimes kids, we think of like these exotic, cool environmental places like the rainforest or the Amazon. But we have a lot of these really cool um environmental mirror, just really cool habitat and environments here in our own United States and a lot of times in our own backyard that we don't think of them that way, of all the
Hmm.
life and how cool it is. And other people see the Mississippi or these other rivers as this is really cool. We got to go see it. But if you grow up on it, not that you don't, but you're like, oh yeah. And I think the other thing is like meeting so many cool and smart people and learning more and more about how cool these big river systems are. From not only as being, environmentally, but as a working river and the people you meet in these communities. Um, I don't know, it's just cool. And then we're kind of spoiled. I think we're just a lot of good people out there, man. It's cool, and they let gravitate to what we're doing. So that's refreshing, So
Absolutely. Yeah, it's nice to have a job that generally people really appreciate what you're doing, right? Like,
no, it's great. Yeah, 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 for it definitely is. And meeting a lot of cool, interesting people and it's it's definitely and like I said, just taking for granted just how cool, sometimes you're out scouting, you're in the woods in the middle of nowhere on an island, you're like, wow, this is this is cool, like and it being able to share that with other, like if you get more people to share in those experiences, man, it's good for the soul, man. That's all it really is. It's hard to yeah, anyway.
yeah, no, preaching to the choir here. So are there, from the volunteers and the people that you encounter, are there some common like misconceptions people tend to have about the big rivers that you come across?
I think some people think like, oh, like there's misconceptions, like even students like, oh, we get our water from there, or oh, it's gross, it's really nasty, and it is, and I mean, it isn't parts, and we do need it to be better. They can always be better, and we can do, there's things that we can change and make better, but I don't think it's as bad as people think it is. I mean, it is and isn't. Like, don't get me wrong, there's still, and it depends where you're at, but um, or just how cool it is, like, or how like intimidating. It depends where you're at, because I mean, the river up here, the Mississippi River in the north versus below St. Louis, it's a little bit more. It's a little different river, once you get past the lock and dams. But uh, that I always feel like kids are like, we'll do water testing, like it's still got its share of problems. Don't get me wrong, like I said, between litter and other stuff, but it's sometimes cleaner and better than they think it is based on some of the tests we do. Um, but that's taken a lot of work, people that care and it's not one of those things like we're done now. It's always getting better, right? Like and improving and maintaining that awareness and maintaining, when people make decisions like, taking that stuff in effect. Because once again, the value, right? The value of just on a selfish reason, not for other that for selfish reasons as human survival, we need to protect these really important resources.
Absolutely. So what are the messages you give people about how they can better care for the river then, particularly when it comes to keeping it clean or free of trash?
I just like I said, the main thing is I talk to students is like, hey, reducing our single-use plastics. I talk about like maybe one of the biggest hustles out there, bottled water. Um, in 2018, $31 billion was spent on bottled water. And 60% of it is tap water put in a bottle sold to us for a lot more money, right? Um, I go, hey, kids, how much do your parents ever complain about the price of gas? They go, yeah. I go, well, how much is it for a 16-ounce bottle of water on average at a gas station? They'll say about $2. I go, what's 16 goes in a gallon, 8 times, that's $16 a gallon you're paying for water. That's not any cleaner than necessarily the water from your tap. And the other thing is, they've done studies, Consumer Reports, uh, based on some studies, an article a few years ago said, people that just strictly drink bottled water consume about 86,000 more microplastics a year from the breakdown of these materials in it. And then you think about all the things that come in plastic. So, hey, get away from this stuff. Is our infrastructure perfect? No, but that just goes, you can invest money into public water infrastructure that would be cheaper every year than what you spend on bottled water
Yeah.
and make it, more affordable for just that's something that should be a basic human need and right? In my opinion.
Right. Well, and I think maybe sometimes people struggle with trying to figure out where to get drinking water if they're not at home too. If there's not a drinking fountain, they assume they're not going to be able to get clean water to drink somewhere. But tap water almost everywhere in this country is fine. So you can go into the bathroom of someplace and fill up a bottle with tap water from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been, you see, and even myself, I remember when bottled water first started working at Creed, it's like, well, what is wrong with our water? Like it's convenient, but anyway, it's just like that message and just thinking of other ways to reduce our plastics, like even straws, and people are like, oh, straws. Like, there's 500 million straws used every day in the United States. That circle's going 2.5 times. We survived without straws before, and it's like, and then I saw a comedian going on a rant about, oh, straws, how does it kill the turtles? Like, it's a vast ocean. So it's big. This is just a small part of the problem. I'm like, you fool. It's like two garbage trucks worth of plastic. We need to like re-examine our overuse of these plastics,
Right.
that the production continues to go up. So that's one, is like being conscious as consumers, those are votes, and we're not perfect. I mean, it's hard to totally get away from plastic. I get it. And that's fine. If we're going to use plastic, just make a closed loop system. The other thing is like keeping where you live clean, right? Just not littering and understanding those connections. Like that storm drain leads to potentially a river. That's that creek or that little gully over time, making those connections or stuff we put on our lawns or, stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. What we can do, just being conscious of this stuff, I think is very, at least that's the first step. And then, making, not eliminate plastic altogether, but little things make a big difference. And a lot of people, like Chad says, a lot of people doing little things makes a big impact.
Absolutely. And I think people are looking for ways that they can do something to contribute too, especially when the large scale solutions seem so unobtainable or so far out of reach. Like finding practical little things that we as individuals can do on a day-to-day basis. I think it feels good. It gives people a sense of hope that yeah, we can do something.
Yeah, it's kind of like this. What's that story about the guy on the beach and the guy's watching this one guy throw starfish in the ocean? He's like, "You're never going to save them all." He's like, "Well, made a difference for that starfish." It's like it's a ripple effect, right? When Chad first started up, I hear a lot of people like, "You're not going to make a difference. It's crazy. Good luck with that." But it's not only the stuff that Chad's done, but these other organizations like that have spawned, like the Missouri. There's other organizations that kind of mimic his model, Mississippi River Relief, that does the same stuff on Missouri River Relief.
Mhm.
Uh, keep uh, uh, Tennessee beautiful. They have a rivers thing that does stuff on the Tennessee River, and it's smaller, but she's this lady started it, inspired by Chad, and she pulls out over 100,000 pounds of trash or more every year, with volunteers.
Right.
Um, and then there's more I can tell you, but just that ripple effect of Chad and his energy, and that's real, man. That's a real thing. It's contagious, right? Negative and positive energy contagious, and it's real and it's tangible. It feels good when you can do tangible things, right?
Right. Right. I mean, it's again, it's that ripple effect, as you say. Like, Chad had a fairly simple idea, and he was able to grow this and get some attention for it, and that inspired a lot of other people to do similar things in their backyard. So there are dozens of organizations around the country now that do very similar cleanups that, maybe they wouldn't have if someone like Chad hadn't come along to get it going first.
Yeah, no, it's cool. And I mean, even like doing like in the winter, I'll get these calls from these ironically Lego leagues, which is plastic, but they're like some of their things is solutions to they'll have these Lego league groups, solutions for like reducing like plastic pollution or pollution problems for oceans and rivers. And you're having young kids thinking of innovative ways coming up with, and it's just cool to see these little offshoots. And a lot of times I'm like, well, I can tell you this, but you guys know more about, I've learned stuff from you guys today. It's cool though, it's cool to see.
Yeah. So you spend much of your year working on the river. Like, do you get to recreate or take it easy on the river at all? Or
Oh, for sure. I mean, we try to keep a standard schedule, from 7 to 4, 5-ish. That obviously can change when stuff comes up, and you know, there's just stuff that other day-to-day chores you got to do, or some kind of incident comes up where the day is longer. But try to, on the weekends if we're in town, go check out music if we're in a cool location, and um go see some sights where we're at. Sometimes the crew goes into a town and has a couple beers. That might happen. Just that, and just like a lot of us, like I'll go to a gym in a nearby town if we're there for a while, and um yeah, there's time. I mean, then just hanging out, playing cards or playing games on the barge with the crew. It's kind of like your family away from home. So
right.
yeah.
So with all that time you spend on the river, are you a sunrise or sunset person?
I'm more The older I get, I'm more of a sunrise person. I'm the old guy now that you got the younger bucks. I'm the old guy that's in his room watching maybe Netflix or just reading at the end of earlier than some of those young kids. I just can't do it. Like they'll be out there laughing in the galley, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to bed. Not every night, not every night. I'm not, on a week. I can try to hang with them on a weekend, but yeah. Anyway,
Mike, thank you so much for your time. This has been fantastic. If folks want to know more about Living Lands and Water, or follow the work that you're doing, like what are some of the main places they could go to keep up?
so we have our website at livinglandsandwaters.org. It just has a lot more information about the programs, events, where we're going to be. We try to put our schedule for the year as far in advance as we can on there. And then we're also on social media at Instagram, Living Lands and Waters, and Facebook at Living Lands and Waters too, and follow, what we're doing, unique finds and stuff like that.
And that would also be a great place to go if they were looking to donate some money or something else to help with the mission.
Yeah, I'm gonna just yeah, we need money or we're gonna have to fire the youngest crew member, baby boy. I'm just gonna try to maybe I'll send pictures to show you baby boy. No, I'm just no, but no, yeah, that it's much appreciated. And we like to think we get a lot out of what the money we give, and we appreciate every, even from my cousin sending $50 or so, our bigger sponsors. So yeah.
Awesome. I'll put all that in the show notes. There'll be links to all that in the show notes. People can just go there and find it for themselves. And I guess that's it. That's a wrap. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I'm a huge fan of Living Lands and Waters. You all do great work. You're inspiring.
Thanks, Dean. I appreciate it, man. Appreciate you having me on. I really do.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the series on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss out on future episodes. I offer the podcast for free, but when you support the show with a few bucks through Patreon, you help keep the program going. Just go to patreon.com/Dean Klinkenberg. If you want to know more about the Mississippi River, check out my books. I write the Mississippi Valley Traveler guidebooks for people who want to get to know the Mississippi better. I also write the Frank Dodge Mystery Series that's set in places along the river. Find them wherever books are sold. The Mississippi Valley Traveler podcast is written and produced by me, Dean Klinkenberg. Original music by No Offense. See you next time.